A family moves into a house where they're stalked by something they can't see. The Taylor family, James, Sarah, and their two children, Lily and Max, had been searching for a fresh start. When they found the two-story colonial house nestled in a peaceful suburb, it felt like destiny. It had a white picket fence, a backyard big enough for the kids to play, and sunlight that spilled into the living room like warm honey. They were told it had been on the market for a while due to previous owners relocating overseas. The price seemed too good to be true, but they were eager for change and brushed off any doubts. As they unpacked boxes and hung family photos on the walls, laughter filled the air. The neighbors were kind, and everything seemed ideal. It was the kind of home you'd expect to see in a movie. But beneath the polished floors and painted walls, something ancient and restless stirred, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal itself. At first, it was just a feeling, an uneasy sense that someone stood just behind them. Sarah would pause mid-task, glancing over her shoulder only to find an empty hallway. James dismissed it as stress from the move. Then Lily started mentioning the shadow person who watched her from the stairs at night. Max, only 5, said he didn't like the man in the corner of his room, even though no one else could see him. Sarah began locking the bathroom door behind her out of instinct, though she couldn't say why. The sensation grew stronger each day. They'd feel eyes on them while eating dinner or hear floorboards creak upstairs when everyone was downstairs. Doors that were shut would be found open. Cold air passed by as if someone brushed past them. They checked the security of their windows and doors. They were always locked. The presence was unseen, but undeniably real. It began subtly. A mug left on the kitchen counter would be found in the sink. Chairs moved slightly from their original position. One night, James walked into the living room to find all the picture frames on the floor. Glass unbroken, yet lined up in a perfect row. Children's toys would activate in the dead of night, dolls whispering, trucks revving their engines. Sarah heard faint laughter behind walls, as though someone were inside. At 3:07 a.m. each night, a loud thump echoed through the hallway, waking everyone. They checked the attic, basement, every pipe and beam, but found nothing out of place. One evening, they watched in horror as their dining room chandelier began to sway, slowly at first, then violently, even though there was no breeze. The air turned heavy, thick with a presence that seemed to announce its growing power. Whatever it was no longer hiding. Determined to catch whatever was tormenting them, James installed cameras in every room, motion sensors, night vision, even audio triggers. He stayed up late reviewing footage, eyes straining, hoping for a shadow, a figure, anything. But every time something happened, when Max screamed that someone pulled his blanket off, or when the living room lamp shattered without reason, the footage showed nothing, just static silence, as if the cameras had blinked at the exact moment of the incident. One night, they heard footsteps rush through the hallway, slamming a door. James ran to the monitor. The timestamp was clear, but the screen showed only a still, undisturbed hallway. The family grew increasingly desperate. How could something so loud, so physical, be invisible to their eyes and technology? It was as if the entity lived just outside the frame of reality, teasing them with its presence, tormenting them with its elusiveness, feeding off their growing helplessness. It no longer settled for noises and moved objects. The entity had grown bolder. One night, Sarah was shoved hard against the wall while folding laundry. Her back bore long red scratches she couldn't explain. James, skeptical by nature, was dragged from the bed by an unseen force, his shoulder dislocated in the process. Lily woke up screaming, her arm covered in bruises shaped like fingers. Even Max, too young to understand, showed signs of being scratched. Though he claimed it was bad thing playing tag. The air in the house turned cold, oppressive. The family felt watched constantly, as if every movement was being studied, judged. Sleep became scarce. Every corner felt like it hid something ready to strike. They tried calling priests, spiritualists. No one could help. Whatever lived in that house wasn't just a ghost, it was a predator, and it was growing stronger with each passing day. After consulting an old friend who studied the paranormal, James and Sarah learned the horrifying truth. The entity wasn't bound by traditional hauntings. It wasn't here to deliver a message or seek closure. It fed on terror, drawing strength from every scream, every racing heart. It was an emotional parasite, thriving off the fear it created. The more scared the family became, the more powerful it grew. It explained the increasing aggression, the precision of its attacks, psychological torment. The expert warned them, do not show fear. How could they not? not? Their home had become a prison of invisible nightmares. They tried to remain calm, to act normal. The entity knew their thoughts, mirrored their dread, twisted their emotions against them. Fear was its food. They were an endless buffet. The realization sent shivers through their bones. The more they fought it, the more terrified they became. Sleep became a battleground. Each member of the Taylor family was plagued with vivid, disturbing dreams that left them drenched in sweat and gasping for air. Sarah dreamt of drowning in black water while unseen hands held her down. James saw their children being taken by shadows, their voices echoing in pain. Lily would wake up screaming, saying, "It was in my bed again." Max stopped speaking entirely. Dreams felt real, too real. And each morning they woke with a lingering terror, as if part of them had been left behind in that world. What was worse, the entity began using the dreams to communicate, showing them visions of a dark room, blood-stained walls, and a man with hollow eyes screaming silently. These dreams weren't random. They were memories, not theirs. Something was trying to tell them its story, dragging them deeper into its world of pain and fear. It was no longer just haunting them, it was possessing them. As if nightmares weren't enough, the entity took things to a terrifying new level, began mimicking their voices. Sarah would hear Lily call for her, only to find her daughter fast asleep. James heard his own voice screaming from the basement. The mimicry became more precise, even reflecting their mannerisms. One night, Sarah saw James walk into the kitchen. Seconds later, the real James came downstairs, puzzled. Max pointed at the TV one afternoon and whispered, "That's not Daddy." Video footage showed brief glitch-like appearances, frames of someone standing where no one should be. Even their dog, usually calm, barked furiously at empty rooms. The entity was no longer content with being invisible. It wanted to be them, replace them. It knew every detail of their lives, and now it was practicing. The fear reached a new level. They weren't just being watched, they were being copied. Digging into public records and forgotten news articles, Sarah uncovered a chilling piece of the house's history. Decades ago, a man named Eli Warren lived there, a reclusive man tormented by grief and paranoia. He believed something evil lived inside the walls and eventually lost his mind. One night, neighbors reported screams. But when the police arrived, they found Eli dead, mutilated in the basement. No one else was found, and the cause of death was never fully explained. They say he wrote cryptic messages on the walls in his own blood, claiming he had become the fear. Sarah discovered a hidden crawl space behind the basement wall where old journals were stashed, filled with disturbing entries and sketches of shadows with hollow eyes. Eli hadn't been mad. He had become the host of the very entity that now haunted them. The house wasn't just cursed, it had been feeding the same horror for generations. No options left, the Taylors decided to confront the entity. They returned to the crawl space, now understanding it was the source. Armed with Eli's journal and candles blessed by a local priest, they performed a makeshift ritual. They recited Eli's final words written in a trembling hand. "Show no fear, only truth." As the room darkened and the temperature dropped, the entity struck, throwing objects, screaming in their ears, distorting the walls. But they held their ground. Sarah shouted at the entity, not with fear, but with sorrow, telling it they knew its pain, that it didn't need to torment others. A sudden silence fell. Then the room erupted in blinding light. The entity's voice cried out, not in anger, but in anguish. When the light faded, so did the presence. The house felt different, lighter. The terror was gone for now. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more spine-tingling horror stories. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss the next haunting episode. Comment below, what would you do if your house was haunted by something you couldn't see?